All right, so today we're diving into something that I'm pretty sure most people listening have dealt with at some point.
Yeah.
Sinusitis. It's no fun.
It's the worst.
So we're talking about those sinuses, the air-filled spaces, in your skull.
Right.
There are four paired sets.
Yes.
Maxillary, frontal, ethmoid, and sphenoid.
Exactly. And of course, modern medicine has its own understanding of all this.
Of course.
But what's so fascinating is how this same condition has been understood and managed for centuries within Ayurveda, which is that incredible system of holistic health.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Absolutely.
So today we're exploring the Ayurvedic perspective.
Right.
We'll come across terms like apinasa and pinasa, which are the Ayurvedic terms for what we often just call sinusitis.
Okay.
Interestingly, these terms can sometimes be related to another condition called Dasta Pradishaya.
Interesting.
We'll also be touching on Shalakya Tantra, which is the branch of Ayurveda that specializes in the head and neck.
Right. Very relevant.
So the goal today is to really understand how Ayurveda views sinusitis.
Okay.
What are the underlying causes from that perspective? How does it manifest according to this ancient wisdom?
Yeah.
And what traditional methods does Ayurveda offer for relief?
I like it. Let's get into it.
Okay, so just to lay the groundwork,
Sure.
as a lot of you are probably aware, sinusitis is so incredibly common.
Oh, yeah.
Typically, it starts with a viral upper respiratory infection, basically a cold.
Right.
And in a small number of cases, this can become a bacterial infection.
Yeah, and you've got the classic symptoms, that uncomfortable, blocked, or congested feeling in your nose, often with discharge coming out the front or dripping down the back of your throat.
Yeah, postnasal drip.
That's the one. And facial pain or pressure, too.
Yeah.
And so many people notice their sense of smell is reduced or even completely gone.
Oh, yeah.
And if these symptoms last for less than 12 weeks, it's typically classified as acute rhinosinusitis.
It's wild how widespread it
It
is.
really is.
I mean, globally, huge numbers of people experience it.
Yeah.
And specifically in India, it's estimated that a very significant portion of the population deals with chronic sinusitis.
Yeah, I can
And it really impacts so many people's lives,
So sure.
day-to-day life,
Yeah.
even missing work.
Absolutely.
So this is where the Ayurvedic perspective comes in.
Okay.
The terms apinasa and pinasa are key here.
Okay.
Based on the signs and symptoms described in the ancient Ayurvedic texts, these conditions are often viewed as the Ayurvedic equivalents of what we call paranasal sinusitis.
Interesting.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
One of the classical Ayurvedic scholars, Acharya Charaka, observed that if dushta pathishaya, another type of nasal issue, if that isn't addressed properly, it can progress and lead to a pinasa.
So there's this interconnectedness
Yes.
between these different conditions.
Yeah. And in a pinasa, the Ayurvedic texts point to an imbalance or aggravation of two of the three doshas in Ayurveda, Vata and Kapha. Now, just to recap, Vata is associated with movement and dryness,
Yeah.
and Kapha is linked to structure lubrication and can sometimes manifest as mucus.
Right.
So what happens when Vata and Kapha are aggravated in the context of a pinasa? What would the symptoms be from an Ayurvedic viewpoint?
Well, the text describes some pretty clear indicators.
Good.
One of the main ones is a reduced sense of smell. And this is interesting. They also talk about the possibility of crusting forming inside the nasal passages. You'll also have nasal obstruction, which can show up in different ways, sometimes as dryness, other times with wetness. There could even be a loss of taste, noisy breathing, and typically a thick yellow discharge from the nose.
Yeah, that sounds similar to some of what we see in modern sinusitis,
Definitely.
especially when it lingers.
Yeah.
You mentioned other related nasal conditions like pudinasa and dosapradishaya.
Right.
What are the distinctions there?
So pudinasa is primarily characterized by a foul odor coming from the nose and mouth. But dosapradishaya seems to cover a broader spectrum of nasal problems with varying degrees of nasal blockage,
Okay.
sometimes congested, sometimes clear, along with a wet or dry sensation in the nose
Yeah.
and a diminished sense of smell.
Okay, so they're distinct, but they all fall under this umbrella of Nasagata rogas.
Yeah, or nasal diseases in Ayurveda.
So we've got a clearer picture of how Ayurveda views this condition.
Right.
Now, how does this system approach its management? It's got to be different from just reaching for over-the-counter stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Ayurveda takes a holistic approach, as we talked about.
Right.
The goal isn't just to alleviate the immediate discomfort, but to address the underlying imbalances in the doshas
Yeah.
and ultimately promote overall well-being.
Yep.
For Apinas and Pinasa, the management strategies involved a variety of therapies.
Okay.
Some of the main ones mentioned are Dipana Pachana, Vamana Virachana Dumapana, and really importantly, Nasya Karma, which involves administering medicine through the nose, and a related technique called Shirovirachana.
Okay, so these are some interesting terms.
Yeah.
What are Dipana and Pachana?
Okay.
How do they help manage sinusitis in Ayurveda?
So Dipana and Pachana are foundational concepts in Ayurvedic treatment. Their main function is to address what's called samadosha.
Okay.
This refers to undigested metabolic waste or toxins that can accumulate in the body and contribute to illness.
Okay.
So it's kind of like if your digestion isn't working properly, undigested stuff builds up.
Right.
Dipana therapies work to boost Agni, which you can think of as your digestive fire,
Okay.
the body's ability to process food and eliminate waste.
Got it.
Then Pachana therapies help to digest and break down this ama, or these accumulated toxins.
Okay.
The goal is to transform the doshas from a sama state to a nirama state, meaning free from those undigested impurities.
Okay, so we're optimizing the internal processing system.
Exactly.
Now, I also saw Snehana and Sudana mentioned. It sounds like these might be external treatments.
Yes, exactly. Snehana often involves applying oils, like through abhyanga, which is therapeutic massage. This is believed to soften the doshas and increase blood circulation in that area.
Yeah.
Mukhabhyanga would be a specific type of snehana that focuses on the face.
Okay.
Now, Sudana karma, that's steam therapy or sudation.
Okay.
The idea here is to induce sweating, which helps to liquefy accumulated doshas, especially mucus, making it easier to expel them.
Right. So first we're boosting internal digestion.
Yeah.
Then using oils and steam to loosen and mobilize things.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, Vaman and Virachana.
Yeah.
Those sound more intense.
They can be.
What are those all about for sinus issues?
So Vamana karma is therapeutic emesis, which is basically inducing vomiting in a controlled way.
Right.
In Ayurveda, this is mainly used to eliminate pitta and kapha doshas.
Okay.
And for nasal problems, the idea is to expel them through the upper channels.
Meaning the...
Exactly. And a study we looked at actually showed significant relief in sinusitis symptoms, like sneezing, nasal discharge, obstruction, headache, even watery eyes after Vamana therapy.
Okay, so pretty significant impact.
Yeah.
And what about Virachana karma?
So that's therapeutic purgation.
Okay.
It involves controlled elimination of fluids containing dissolved biochemicals, mainly through the lower channels.
Okay.
The proposed mechanisms are pretty interesting. It's thought to increase secretion, potentially hinder nutrient absorption, and increase GI motility, all contributing to the removal of waste and imbalanced doshas.
Okay. Now, Dhumapana, that's medicated smoking, right?
Yeah.
It's not exactly what we're used to in modern medicine.
It's definitely different.
So how does it work for sinus issues in Ayurveda?
Okay, so in Ayurveda, Dhumapana karma is believed to act directly on vata and kapha, especially in the head and neck.
Okay.
The herbs used are said to have a sukshma guna, a subtle quality, that lets them reach even the smallest channels in the body. Combined with their ushna, hot, and tikshna, sharp qualities, they help to liquefy and eliminate the doshas, essentially clearing those passages. There's also the idea that the gaseous form increases bioavailability, with the medicinal properties being absorbed through the lungs.
Right, directly to the source.
Exactly.
Okay, so delivering herbal remedies in a gaseous form.
Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
Now, we definitely have to talk about Nasya karma.
Yes.
The sources really emphasize its importance for nasal disorders.
Absolutely. Nasya karma, or nasal installation therapy, is considered a cornerstone of treatment for Urdhvachatrugata rogas, which means diseases of the head and neck region.
Okay.
It involves administering medicine through the nose.
Okay.
And this can be in the form of ghee, oil powder liquid, or even smoke.
So a very targeted approach.
Exactly like a direct delivery system.
Right. To where the problem is.
Exactly, and even beyond. So while it directly targets the organs above the clavicle, it's also thought to indirectly affect the whole body.
By influencing the endocrine glands and nervous system.
Wow.
But specifically for nasal issues, the proposed mechanism is pretty detailed.
Okay.
The tela, or oil, for example, is thought to travel to the olfactory epithelium and the olfactory bulb.
Yeah.
Then it passes through a bony structure called the cribriform plate to reach the brain.
Wow.
This is believed to generate neuronal impulses that help clear out the doshas. Plus, it nourishes and rejuvenates the olfactory nerve.
Okay.
Which could explain its benefit for impaired smell.
Right.
Studies have actually shown improvements in headache, noisy breathing, and loss of smell with Nasya Karma.
Really cool.
Yeah, and it's not just modern studies that point to this. Classical texts like Charnaka and Susruta Samhita recommend a whole range of therapies for apinasa, including Dipanapachana Langana, which is fasting therapy, as well as Vamanavirachana, a type of enema called Astapnavasti, and of course Nasya.
So this multi-pronged approach has been documented for centuries. Exactly.
It's interesting to see that combination of internal purification and really targeted treatment.
Definitely.
And the source even mentions traditional Sri Lankan medicine having its own ways of approaching these issues.
Oh, yeah, in Sri Lankan traditional medicine.
Yeah.
They also recognize conditions corresponding to apinasa and pinasa, sometimes considering them very closely related, especially when pinasa develops as a result of a dasta pradashaya.
Got it.
They use therapies like Sweta Karma Dumapana, and a bunch of local treatments like Gandusha, which is gargling, Kawalagraha, holding liquid in the mouth, Karnapurna, ear filling, and Anjana Karma, eye treatments. And get this, they also mention Rakta Mokshana, which is bloodletting with leeches, specifically for nasal polyps, which can be a complication of pinasa.
Interesting.
And they have their own remedies using local plants like Hisgalam and Gajalam Vedu and Naila Vedakama.
So many different traditional practices across different regions, but aimed at similar underlying issues.
Right.
It's great that the source also mentions some research that's looking at the effectiveness of these Ayurvedic approaches.
Absolutely. The studies mentioned offer some encouraging initial evidence.
Yeah.
For example, we talked about how that study on Vamana Karma showed relief in various sinusitis symptoms. Another study on Dumapana, specifically using Shatavadi, found that combining it with an oral medicine called Pipali Rasayana was more effective for chronic rhinitis than Dumapana alone.
So combining different Ayurvedic therapies.
Yeah, exactly. It suggests that there might be synergistic benefits.
Okay, so this hints at the complexity.
Definitely.
And potential for really personalized treatment plans within Ayurveda.
Yeah.
And what about the research specifically looking at Nasya Karma?
There's a really interesting study, a randomized controlled trial, that looked at Nasya Karma combined with an oral formulation called Vyoshadi Vati for apinasa. They compared it to Nasya alone and Vyoshadi Vati alone. And the group that got the combination treatment showed the most significant reduction in headache and noisy breathing. Plus improvement in their sense of smell. Another study found that Kalingadya Navana Nasya provided relief for patients diagnosed with Dastapratishaya.
So these findings suggest that Nasya Karma, especially when combined with other things, can be really valuable.
Definitely.
These findings provide some initial support for the traditional uses of these therapies. It's cool to see modern science investigating these ancient practices.
It is,
And just to reiterate what we've been talking about, Nasya Karma is a central therapy, not just for nasal disorders, but for anything affecting the head and neck.
You got it. And as Acharya Vagbhata put it, the nose is the doorway to Shiras, meaning the head.
The doorway to Shiras, that's a powerful image.
It is.
It really helps you understand the emphasis on treating through the nasal passages.
Exactly. The idea is that medicines can reach the Shringataka Marma, which is a vital point where nerves from the nose, eyes, tongue, and ears all meet. From this central point, the effects can spread throughout the head, helping to eliminate those imbalanced doshas.
Okay, so it's all about targeting that upper body. It paints a picture of a very comprehensive and targeted approach to what we call sinusitis.
Absolutely.
It's not just about reducing inflammation. It's about addressing the underlying energetic imbalances. And using specific pathways for treatment.
Exactly.
So Ayurveda offers a really detailed and nuanced way of understanding and managing this condition.
And therapies like Nasya Karma highlight a unique approach to the head and neck. It goes beyond what's typically done in conventional medicine. The emphasis on personalized treatment, tailored to the individual, that's also key in Ayurveda.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is.
I mean, with sinusitis being so common and all the discussion around antibiotic use.
It makes you wonder.
It does.
Considering how widespread sinusitis is.
Right.
And the concerns about antibiotics. Could integrating certain well-researched traditional approaches alongside conventional treatments offer a more holistic path to relief?
It's definitely something to think about.
For sure. A question worth exploring.
Absolutely.